After 19 years of being the only one who works weekends, my boss promoted the office favorite who takes 3-hour lunches for leadership potential. I cheerfully congratulated her and said, "Congrats to Amanda," I said. When my boss saw my resignation, she freaked out. "You fool." She started screaming when I always thought I understood loyalty. Not the kind they put on glossy posters in the break room, with hands stacked together over a mountain peak, but the kind that comes from bleeding years into a place, until it feels less like a job and more like marrow. That night, under the cold hum of fluorescent lights and the empty drone of cubicles gone dark, I learned exactly what that loyalty was worth. My name is Marcus Hale, I'm 45 years old, and for nearly 2 decades I have served as senior operations analyst at a firm called Northstone Dynamics. 19 years of the same badge swipe, the same coffee pot, the same late night hum of coffee machines when everyone else had already gone home. 19 years of weekends surrendered, vacations canceled, dinners missed, because there was always another deadline, another fire to put out. I thought it meant something. I thought it would buy me security, respect, maybe even a future. That afternoon the conference room was full, every chair taken, bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, all waiting for the announcement. It was supposed to be mine. Everyone knew it. The department head role wasn't just the next rung on the ladder, it was the summit after a climb that had nearly broken me more than once. I sat with my notepad open, heart steady, not nervous, just ready. It was the first time in years I allowed myself to feel anticipation instead of obligation. The speech started the way they always do. Empty thanks, nods to hard work, the hollow kind of praise that could apply to anyone. I let it wash over me like white noise. But then, I heard her name. Amanda. Amanda with her 3-hour lunches and her breezy oops emails. Amanda who spent more time at her desk shopping for shoes than reviewing reports. Amanda, promoted for her leadership potential. I felt my hands clap before I even registered the sound. Loud, cheerful. I congratulated her with a smile wide enough to convince the room. That's how I've survived here. Always the steady one. Always the man who doesn't flinch. But inside, I felt the floor give way. Not rage, not even heartbreak. Something sharper, colder. She floated to the front of the room, soaking in the applause like sunlight, beaming in. A way only the office favorite can beam when she's handed something she never earned. The boss patted her shoulder, gave a speech about vision and presence. Words that stung worse than any insult. I'd given them 19 years of nights alone in this building, holding the place together with duct tape and spit. She gave them charisma. They rewarded her. The meeting ended. People filtered out, buzzing with forced cheer. A few of them giving me looks they couldn't quite disguise. Sympathy, pity. I stayed behind, straightening my tie, gathering my papers with deliberate calm. That's when I heard it. My boss leaning close to HR as they collected their notes, her voice low but not low enough. "He's dependable," she said. "That's the problem. He'll never leave, Amanda. She's the face we want." I froze in the doorway. 19 years collapsed into that single sentence. Every late night, every birthday missed, every weekend sacrificed. It all reduced to one word. Dependable. Not valuable, not irreplaceable, just safe enough to ignore. I walked back to my desk in silence, past the cubicles that once felt like a second home, but now looked like cages. I sat down, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the black leather folder I'd bought 3 years ago but never used. Inside was the template of a resignation letter, half finished, the edges yellowed from waiting. I told myself I'd only complete it if the day ever came that they made me feel invisible. That day had arrived. I smoothed the paper flat, uncapped my pen, and began to write. No anger spilled onto the page, no begging, just clean lines, clinical truth. My time here has run its course, effective immediately. I resigned from my position. Thank you for the opportunities. When I signed my name, my hand didn't shake. There was no ceremony, no sigh of relief, only silence, thick and final. I folded the letter once, slid it into the folder, and tucked it carefully into my briefcase. Tomorrow, I would hand it to them, and for the first time in 19 years, I would take something back. They thought I'd never leave, but tomorrow I'd hand them the one thing they thought I'd never give up. I found Amanda near the break room, already basking in the glow of her new title. She had the look of someone who'd stumbled onto a stage and convinced herself she'd earned the spotlight. I smiled, clapped her on the shoulder, and said, "Congratulations, Amanda, you deserve it." The words slid off my tongue as smooth as honey, and she beamed like a pageant queen who'd just been handed the crown. My boss lingered nearby, watching me closely, perhaps expecting bitterness or defiance. Instead, I gave her exactly what she wanted to see, the loyal soldier falling in line. I could see the corners of her mouth tilt upward, smug and satisfied. To her, I was harmless now, neutralized by false cheer. She believed she had me pegged. When the crowd dispersed, I wandered the office in a slow, deliberate circle. Each cubicle, each desk, every filing cabinet told a story. The walls whispered with 19 years of my sweat, yet no one saw it that way. They thought I was just a cog. What they never understood was how much of this place had been silently wired through me, threaded with traps and knots invisible to the untrained eye. The spreadsheets that looked routine to Amanda, or the others, they were coded, layered with formulas only I had built, relationships between cells that formed a skeleton key only my mind could navigate. To anyone else they were nothing but a labyrinth. I passed by the vendor binders, stacked in the supply closet. Their contracts were tied to accounts registered under my name with clauses negotiated through relationships I'd cultivated over years of late-night calls and weekend emergencies. No one else had the passwords, the pins, the private handshakes hidden in those agreements. Pull me out of the picture, and the entire network would snarl. The IT security codes, the renewal schedules, the back doors I created in the system when no one was watching. All of it looked mundane, but it was mine. I'd built it that way on purpose, not out of malice but survival. Dependable doesn't mean weak, it means indispensable. I thought back to the times they never saw. 2 in the morning, logged into servers that were seconds from crashing. The fire I stopped from gutting the warehouse because I noticed a discrepancy in shipment logs and made the call myself. The countless silent recoveries that kept payroll flowing when the system glitched. When everyone else was home drinking wine or catching flights to weekend getaways. I remembered Amanda once posting pictures from a rooftop bar at a team-building retreat, her glass of sangria lifted high, while I sat in the server room, knee-deep, in wires, sweating through my shirt to keep the system from buckling. She collected hashtags. I collected scars. Every memory pressed tighter, each one a spring winding inward, pulling taut, storing energy that begged for release. I could feel it humming under my skin as I walked the aisles of empty desks. I wasn't angry. Anger fades. This was something steadier, colder, and far more patient. When I returned to my own desk, I slid open the drawer and pulled the leather folder free. The resignation letter was folded neatly inside, ready to deliver. I set it on the desk, just for a moment, feeling the weight of it in the air. My eyes drifted toward the closed door of my boss's office, the shadow of her form moving back and forth forth behind the frosted glass. I imagined walking in, dropping the letter on her desk, and watching the smirk drain from her face. For a second the fantasy pulled me forward, but I didn't move. I picked up the folder, slipped it back into my briefcase, and let the moment pass. The timing wasn't right. Not yet. A resignation delivered too early is just a tantrum. A resignation delivered at the perfect moment is a weapon. I wanted precision. I wanted impact. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. I pictured her expression when the day came. At first she would laugh, dismissive, confident that I was bluffing. Then the laugh would die, and the silence would creep in. That silence would turn to fear as she realized the foundation beneath her throne was already gone, stripped away piece by piece in ways she never saw. Shock first, then fear. I smiled to myself, a small private smile no one else in this building would understand. Let them think I was harmless. Let them believe the mask. I was already halfway gone, and when the moment arrived, they'd discover what loyalty turned inside out can truly do. I started small, the kind of moves no one notices in real time, the kind that only reveal themselves weeks later, when the rot has already set in. Vendor renewals came first. I logged into the secure portal, the one only I had credentials for, and began canceling auto renewals. Each contract slipped into limbo. No alarms, no emails, just a silent countdown to expiration. To anyone glancing at the logs, it looked like routine housekeeping. To me it was the first domino. Then, I moved to the data caches. For years I'd been the one to tidy them up, cleaning redundancies, backing up critical archives, scrubbing corruption before it spread. Now I reversed the habit. Not overt sabotage. That would have been sloppy. Instead, I erased only the caches tied directly to my personal credentials, erasing the bridges no one else even knew existed. The pathways between systems became fragile, brittle, one good push from collapse. It felt like laying traps in a battlefield, each one invisible, until triggered. Every contract was a claymore, every login, a tripwire. I thought of my father then, the image as vivid as if he'd been standing in the doorway of my office. A factory man, his hands cracked from years of grease and steel. I was 12 when I first asked him why he never complained, why he never demanded more than endless shifts and a body breaking piece by piece. He looked at me with a kind of tired pride and said, "They'll never thank you for the sweat, only punish you for the silence when you stop." At the time, I didn't understand. Now his words rang like prophecy. That silence was coming. I was going to give it to them, and when it hit, they would drown in it. In the meantime, I played my part. I smiled in the hallways, congratulated Amanda again on her promotion, even offered to help her settle into the new role. She lapped it up, mistaking the olive branch for surrender. My boss, though, wasn't as easily soothed. She started calling me into her office more often, cloaking the summons under the banner of mentorship. She'd lean back in her chair, fold her hands like a benevolent leader, and ask how I was doing. "I want to make sure you feel valued here, Marcus," she said once, her eyes flicking toward the resignation folder she assumed still slept in my drawer. I nodded, calm, measured. "Of course, I'm fine. Happy to help, however I can." My tone gave her nothing. Behind the mask, I was already pulling pins. The mentorship charade continued for weeks. She'd asked me to walk Amanda through critical processes, shadow her as she attempted to run meetings, reassure her when she stumbled. I became the invisible scaffolding, propping up their illusion of leadership. All the while, I was removing bolts one by one. I withheld the tiniest details, the unwritten rules of which vendors delivered late, unless nudged, which databases needed manual refreshes, which clients required Sunday night emails to keep them from bolting. Without me, Amanda would find only silence where she expected structure. At night, when the building was empty, I'd stand by the window overlooking the city. The glow of street lamps reflected off the glass, painting me in a silhouette no one could see. I would catalog the pieces in my head: systems, renewals, caches, contract, each one fragile, each one armed. A battlefield prepped not with bullets, but with absence. And I knew the moment I walked away, the silence would roar to life. My boss grew restless. She started dropping hints in our conversations, little probes to see if I was planning to leave. "You've been so steady all these years, Marcus. You're the backbone of this place. Amanda will need you more than ever now." Her voice carried the faintest tremor, as if she'd begun to realize that dependability can vanish the second it's taken for granted. I met her gaze, unblinking, and said, "I'll always do what's best for the company." She smiled with relief, not realizing the truth buried in my words. What was best was already in motion, and it didn't include her. The beauty of the setup was its subtlety. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just systems allowed to bend until the day they finally snapped. I thought about the chaos that would erupt: missed shipments, unpaid invoices, payroll delays, client calls that spiraled into anger. They wouldn't know where to look first. And Amanda, sitting in her new chair, would find herself drowning in fires she didn't even know existed. My boss would panic, scrambling to plug holes in a ship she never realized was already sinking. But I didn't pull the trigger yet. That was the hardest part: patience. Every instinct begged for me to watch it all collapse, to see their faces as the silence swallowed them. Instead, I held back, savoring the pressure as it built. The traps were set, the wires were cut, the clock was ticking. When the moment came, it would not be with fire or fury, it would be with absence. A silence so complete, it would feel like suffocation, and I would be nowhere near it. The morning I chose to deliver the letter felt like any other. The office buzzed with its usual routine: phones ringing, keyboards clicking, people drifting from desk to desk, with coffee cups clutched like lifelines. No one noticed me slip the folder into my briefcase as I arrived. No one saw the quiet certainty on my face as I walked toward my boss's office. After 19 years, the walk felt heavier than I expected, but not with dread. It was the weight of finality, the satisfaction of a trigger pulled after hours of steady aim. She glanced up as I knocked on the doorframe, her expression already smug. She assumed I was coming in to share another cheerful nod, maybe to reassure her that I was still the dependable shadow she'd always counted on. "Marcus," she said warmly, gesturing me inside. "What's on your mind?" I sat down across from her desk, set the folder neatly in front of me, and slid it toward her. "Just wanted to make this official," I said. My voice was calm, steady, almost too casual. "I've decided it's time for new challenges." Her eyes flicked down, caught the bold heading, resignation, and then back up at me. For a moment relief crossed her face, a smirk almost, the kind of look that said she had been expecting this, even counting on it. She leaned back in her chair, and let out a faint laugh. "Well, Marcus, I think this will be good for you. You've been here a long time. Sometimes change is healthy." I simply nodded, watching her carefully. Then came the shift. Her eyes moved back to the letter, scanning the words with more focus this time. Her lips pressed together, the smirk fading. Her forehead tightened, the silence stretched as realization seeped in, creeping through her like cold water. She looked up sharply. "Wait," she said. "You can't mean effective immediately." "That's what it says. The relief vanished. Panic flared in her eyes, raw and unguarded. She leaned forward, gripping the paper as if her hands could anchor it, her voice breaking through the calm, like a knife. You fool. You don't know what you've done. This whole place runs on you. Her words hung in the air, sharper than any insult. For the first time in 19 years, she admitted the truth, but only out of fear. I didn't move, didn't speak. I let the silence answer for me. That silence was worse than shouting. It terrified her more than any outburst ever could. Because by then, I'd already taken myself out of their system. The collapse had already begun. She scrambled, words tumbling, her hands fluttering like a trapped bird. We can work something out. Stay on a few more months. Train Amanda. Transition the accounts. At least cover the contracts. I tilted my head slightly, watching her spin. Across the room, Amanda had been summoned, no doubt to witness the torch being passed. She stood near the wall, pale as paper, her new title hanging around her neck like a noose. The confidence she wore in meetings was gone, replaced by a dawning horror. She understood, maybe for the first time, that the crown they'd given her was forged from quicksand. I turned to her, let my eyes linger on her trembling hands, then smiled. Congratulations again, Amanda, I said softly. The crown suits you. Her throat bobbed, but no words came. A soft ping echoed from the computer on the desk. Then another, an alert. The system flickered on the screen behind her, notifications stacking in quiet succession. Contracts unrenewed, vendors unreachable, backups missing. The infrastructure they believed unshakable was already fraying at the edges. She saw it in the numbers, even if she didn't yet know what they meant. My boss twisted back toward the monitor, her face paling as more warnings lit up. She typed furiously, tried passwords, commands, anything to stop the bleeding, but the blood was already in the water. I rose slowly, smoothing my tie, briefcase in hand. It looks like you're busy, I said calmly. I'll let you handle it. She turned back toward me, eyes wide, face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but whatever word she meant to throw at me collapsed into air. The silence filled the room like smoke, choking her as I walked to the door. I didn't look back. As I stepped into the hallway, the buzz of the office sounded different. Phones still rang, keyboards still clicked, people still laughed at jokes by the copier. None of them knew the foundation was cracking beneath their feet. None of them realized the collapse had already started. That wasn't my problem anymore. 3 weeks after I walked out of Northstone Dynamics for the last time, the first whispers began to reach me. A friend from accounting called late at night, voice hushed as if he were speaking from a war zone. It's chaos here, Marcus. Absolute chaos. Nothing works. Clients are screaming. Vendors are threatening lawsuits. Amanda doesn't even know where to start. I listened without comment, letting his words flow into the silence of my apartment. I didn't need the details to know exactly what was happening. I had written the script long before I left. The vendor renewals I had canceled began to choke the company almost immediately. Essential supplies stopped arriving. Software licenses expired without warning, leaving whole departments locked out of their systems. Amanda, sitting in her new throne, had no idea where the renewal agreements were stored or which vendors required an early reminder. She stared at screens blinking red, drowning in alerts, and tried to smile through board meetings she didn't understand. Every cheerful phrase she once used, words like synergy and innovation, sounded hollow when entire workflows collapsed around her. Meanwhile, the data caches I had scrubbed left the company's backbone brittle. When files went missing, they had no backups to recover from. Months of correspondence with clients evaporated overnight. The IT team scrambled to restore order, but the only man who knew the architecture was gone, carrying nothing but a leather briefcase and a smile. I could almost picture the panic spreading through the building, like fire. Each department calling for help, each manager realizing too late that the man they dismissed as dependable was the only thing standing between them and ruin. The real spectacle, though, was my boss. At first, she tried to maintain control, striding through the office with her chin high, pretending the storm was just weather. But storms don't vanish because you refuse to look at the clouds. Within days, clients began walking. I heard one left in the middle of a meeting, muttering that they couldn't trust a company that couldn't even keep payroll consistent. Vendors pulled out one after another, leaving contracts in tatters. Money bled from Northstone like water through open fingers. My boss screamed into phones, barked orders, demanded miracles from people already broken by exhaustion. None came. The board turned on her quickly. Once her golden words had earned her respect, but now the same people who praised her vision branded her incompetent. She was forced out, disgraced, with her name dragged through the same mud she had shoveled onto me. Amanda remained behind for a time, clutching the crown I had handed her, but it weighed more heavily with each passing day. Reports say she cried in meetings, begged for more resources, claimed she had been set up to fail. She was right, though she would never admit who set her up. One afternoon, I found myself near the office, not deliberately, just a walk that ended at a place I had once called home. The building loomed above me, its glass windows reflecting a gray sky. Outside, employees filed out with cardboard boxes, the quiet shuffle of people uprooted from careers they thought were stable. Some were pale with shock, others furious, others simply hollow. I stood across the street, a ghost in plain sight, and watched the empire I had built on my back crumble into dust. Through the glass I saw Amanda in the lobby, her mascara streaked, shoulders shaking as she clutched papers to her chest. She looked like a child, lost in a storm. I almost pitied her, but pity is wasted on those who profit from another man's silence. Moments later, my boss appeared, flanked by 2 security guards. She screamed into her phone, her voice muffled by glass, her gestures wild and desperate. It didn't matter who was on the other end of the call. No one was listening anymore. I turned to leave, my steps steady, my chest strangely light. They thought I'd never leave. But the truth is, I didn't leave them. I left them with themselves, and that was the sharpest blade I had. As I walked away, the city around me buzzed with light, traffic, chatter, the endless hum of a world that didn't care about boardrooms or promotions. I thought about betrayal, how it rarely looks like a movie scene. Betrayal isn't always a gun in the dark, or a kiss that lies. Sometimes it's a handshake after 19 years, a pat on the back while they steal your spy. And revenge isn't always fire and blood. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's absence. And sometimes it's the slow sound of an empire eating itself alive. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply kept walking, vanishing into the noise of the city, leaving behind the ruins of a place that once believed I was harmless. The truth was, never in the work I did for them. The truth was, in the silence I left behind.